My name is Elizabeth Marlowe, 38 years old. From the outside, my family must have looked like any other suburban household. A husband with steady work, two children who filled the house with energy in opposite ways, a mother, me, trying to balance part-time jobs with the chaos of raising them. But even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see the exact moment when all of that crumbled, when words that should never have been spoken spilled out of my daughter's mouth and destroyed everything we thought we were. Daniel, my eldest, was 18, quiet, bookish, the kind of boy who carried himself with a soft shyness that made you want to protect him. He liked to stay in his room, studying late into the night or reading novels that piled up like bricks on his desk. He never gave us trouble, not once. No backtalk, no mischief, no slammed doors. If anything, I worried he was too gentle for this world. Then there was Valentina, only 9, a whirlwind of motion and laughter. She was the sun to Daniel's quiet moon, always running, always talking, always tugging at someone's sleeve for attention. With my husband away for long hours, and me stretched thin at work, Daniel often became her anchor. He would come home from college classes and keep her company until I returned. I thought it was sweet. I thought it showed how much he loved her. I believed, with every fiber of my being, that my children cared for one another. That night began like so many others. We had gathered for a family dinner, pasta simmering in the pot, garlic bread on the table, laughter filling the space. My sister-in-law had brought a bottle of wine, my cousins chattered about their children, the air smelled of oregano and roasted tomatoes. Ordinary, warm, safe. And then, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather, Valentina turned to me and said the words that froze my blood. Daniel touched me down there. The room went silent. Forks stilled in midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. For a split second, I thought I had misheard. "What did you say, my love?" My voice trembled despite my effort to keep it gentle. She looked at me with those big, unblinking eyes and repeated, "My brother touched me on my private parts." Twice. The world tilted. My breath caught. My husband's chair screeched back, toppling to the floor. I felt my body move on instinct, standing, hands trembling so badly I nearly spilled my wine. My cousins stared, wide-eyed, mouths half open, as though the ceiling itself had cracked above us. My husband stormed into the hallway, phone clutched in his fist, rage written in every line of his body. I followed like a ghost. He called Daniel once, twice. The first time, no answer. The second, our son picked up. "What's wrong, Mom?" Daniel's voice came through, confused, almost cheerful. "Come home now," I said, my throat constricted. "Why? What happened?" "Just come home." The line went dead. Those 20 minutes before he arrived were the longest of my life. Valentina sat on the couch, legs swinging, as though she had just announced something trivial. My husband paced, clenching and unclenching his fists. The others murmured in the dining room, their whispers heavy as judgment. When Daniel finally walked through the door, his backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder, his expression was puzzled. "What's going on?" Before he could even set his bag down, my husband shoved him hard against the wall. "Did you touch her? Did you touch your sister?" His voice was a roar, sharp enough to split stone. Daniel's eyes went wide. "What? What are you talking about?" I swear, in that moment, I saw nothing but raw confusion on his face. He looked pale, almost sick. "No, of course not. I would never... Why is she saying that?" But my husband didn't hear. He swung his fist, connecting with Daniel's nose. The crack echoed. Daniel crumpled to the floor, blood spilling down his lip, shock and betrayal blazing in his eyes. I did nothing. God forgive me, I did nothing. I didn't kneel to shield him, didn't raise my voice to defend him. I simply stood frozen, arms wrapped tight around Valentina as if clinging to her made me a good mother. He begged, actually begged, through the tears. "Please, Mom, please, you know me. I would never hurt her." But I couldn't speak. My silence screamed louder than any denial. My husband dragged him to his room, pulled his backpack open, tossed clothes and documents into a heap. Then he hurled everything onto the porch. His voice cracked with fury as he bellowed, "You're dead to us. Never come back." Daniel's sobs pierced me. "It's not true. Please don't do this." And still I held my daughter. Still I said nothing. The neighbors would later say they heard the shouting, that they saw my son leave with bloodied clothes stumbling into the night. But none of them intervened. None of them knew what had been said at that table. We blocked his number, cut him off from college support, changed the locks. My husband erased his name from every corner of the house, and for weeks afterward, we convinced ourselves we had done the right thing. Valentina repeated her story when we asked again, calmly, simply, without elaboration. Twice, she would say. No tears, no fear, just the same words. We told ourselves love was enough, that therapy wasn't necessary, that protecting her mattered more than questioning. For a while, peace seemed to return. Valentina played with her dolls again, smiled, slept through the night. My husband refused to speak Daniel's name. The cousins stopped asking questions. The house grew quieter, colder, but we told ourselves it was safer. And then the dreams began. Every night I saw Daniel's face, the blood streaking down, the horror in his eyes, but most of all that look of betrayal, as if he was asking me silently, "Why didn't you believe me?" I would wake in a cold sweat, my arms reaching out for a son who was no longer there. But when morning came, I told myself again that we had chosen correctly, that we had been protecting our little girl, that a mother's love had to mean trust, even if it destroyed everything else. What I didn't know then was that my silence had already split our family apart, and that the price of that silence would come crashing back in ways I could never have imagined. Weeks bled into months. The house felt emptier, quieter, as if Daniel's absence had drained the oxygen from the rooms. Yet, on the surface, life carried on. Valentina laughed again. She played with her paints, hummed as she braided her doll's hair, ran through the hallways with that endless energy of hers. My husband clung to this image like a lifeline, convinced that the storm had passed. He never mentioned Daniel, not once. If I dared to ask, just a whisper, "Have you heard anything? Do you think he's okay?" The look he gave me froze me from the inside. His silence was sharper than knives. To him, Daniel no longer existed. But in the dead of night, I could not keep the ghosts away. Dreams clawed at me. I saw my son's eyes wide with betrayal, blood smeared down his face, whispering in silence, "Why, Mom? Why didn't you even ask me once?" I would wake drenched in sweat, trembling in the darkness. Sometimes I thought I heard the front door creak, as though he were finally coming home, but it was only the wind. I buried myself in routine, folding laundry, cooking meals, helping Valentina with homework, pretending we were still a whole family, pretending my chest wasn't cracking open a little more each day. Then came the Saturday that tore even that illusion away. It was an ordinary afternoon. Valentina had an art class, one of her favorite things. She was bubbling with excitement, clutching her sketchbook against her chest, chattering about the butterflies she wanted to paint. My older niece, barely licensed, offered to drive her. I kissed Valentina's cheek, straightened the bow in her hair, and watched her leave. I remember folding towels on the couch when the phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was frantic, scattered. Words came in fragments that lodged like glass in my ears. Accident, head-on collision, ambulance, critical condition. One died. My hands went cold. The towel slipped from my lap. By the time my husband and I reached the hospital, chaos reigned. Sirens still howled outside. A stretcher flew past us, doctors shouting orders, the smell of antiseptic stinging my nose, and then I saw her. Valentina, my baby. Her small face pale beneath tubes and blood, her tiny frame swallowed by machinery. For a second, the world fell silent, the sound draining from everything except the flat thud of my heartbeat. My niece had died instantly. Valentina had survived, but just barely. The diagnosis spilled from the doctor's mouth like a death sentence. Severe internal injuries, a damaged kidney, multiple hemorrhages. Surgery was immediate, but the outcome uncertain. We sat in the ICU for days that blurred into nights. I never left her side. I slept in a chair, my neck aching, eyes fixed on the monitors that kept her alive. My husband became a statue beside me, rigid, expressionless, a man hollowed out. He never cried, he never spoke. He was just there. And then one night, Valentina's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, she opened her eyes. "Mom," her voice was barely more than air. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." She gave me the faintest smile, fragile and luminous. Then she whispered, "Do you think there's a heaven?" My throat closed. I stroked her hair, fighting the sob that rose inside me. "Yes, my love. Of course there is. Her gaze wandered, distant, as if searching through memories only she could see. Do you think bad people can go there, if they're sorry? My heart pounded. Why do you ask that, darling? Tears welled in her eyes, her lips trembled, and then, with a shuddering breath, she said the words that cracked my world apart. Because I did something very bad. I lied. I froze. The hum of machines roared in my ears. What do you mean? She swallowed weakly. A few months ago, when I said Daniel touched me, it wasn't true. The room spun. I was angry, she whispered. He wouldn't let me use his tablet. I wanted to punish him. I thought, if I said something, you'd believe me. I didn't think it would get so big. Then I got scared. I didn't know how to take it back. The sob tore out of me before I could stop it. I pressed her against my chest, clinging as if I could hold her soul inside mine. No, don't say that. You're not going to die. I forgive you. I'm here. I'll always be here. But even as the words left my mouth, my mind split open with the image of Daniel, his bloodied face, his desperate pleas, his broken eyes. That night, I went home like a woman carrying her own corpse. My husband sat at the kitchen table, silent, staring at nothing. I told him everything, every word of Valentina's confession. He didn't move. He didn't look at me. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, he muttered, "We're not going to judge her. What's done is done." And just like that, he closed the book, as if it were that simple, as if our son hadn't been sacrificed to a lie. But I couldn't live with the silence anymore. In the raw hours of dawn, while the house lay quiet, I turned to my phone. My fingers shook as I searched for Daniel. His number was disconnected, but eventually, through half-abandoned social media, I found him. A profile with no face, only a faint trace of the boy I once knew. I typed a message. "Hi, it's me. Please just read this." No reply. The next day, I sent another. A long, desperate plea. I told him about the accident, about Valentina's confession, about her fragile state. I begged him not for forgiveness, but just to see her, maybe one last time. Hours passed. Silence. Then, his reply. "You all hurt me too much. I don't know if I can forgive, but if she's as bad as you say, I'll go one last time." My hands trembled as I sent him the hospital address. 3 days later, he appeared. I was standing in the hallway when I saw him. Daniel, thinner, gaunt, dark circles etched beneath his eyes. His clothes were plain, his steps heavy as though the world pressed down on his shoulders. My body screamed to run to him, to embrace him, but I couldn't move. He walked into Valentina's room. She saw him, and for a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Her fragile frame shook as tears poured down her face. "I'm sorry. I ruined you. I ruined you." Daniel stood silent, his jaw tight. Finally, in a voice low and cracked, he said, "I can't forgive you completely, but a part of me already has." He took her hand. He stayed for a few minutes. Then he left. He didn't greet me. He didn't look at me. His final words cut like a blade as he walked out the door. "If there's a funeral, I'll be there, but don't expect anything else." And just like that, he was gone. The next morning, the doctor came with grim news. Valentina would need a kidney transplant soon. Without it, she wouldn't survive. He explained the risks, the narrow chances, the urgency. Then he looked at us directly. A biological brother offers the best compatibility. If he's a match, the likelihood of success is far higher. I didn't need to hear more. I already knew. Daniel and Valentina shared the same blood type. And though I had no right to ask him for anything ever again, I also knew he was her only chance. The weight of the doctor's words pressed on me like a physical burden. Her best chance is her brother, a sentence that rang louder than the beeping monitors, louder than the steady hum of machines. I sat by Valentina's bed, clutching her frail hand, staring at her pale face. Tubes and wires seemed to tether her to this world by threads as thin as spider silk. My husband sat in the corner, rigid and silent. He didn't speak Daniel's name, not even now. For him, that bridge was burned to ash. But I couldn't stop seeing Daniel's face, his hollow eyes, the night he walked away. His voice low and final. "If there's a funeral, I'll be there." A week earlier, I might have believed him cruel. Now I understood cruelty wasn't in him, it was in us. I tried to convince myself to wait. Maybe a donor would appear. Maybe the universe wouldn't be so merciless. But each hour I watched my daughter's chest rise and fall. each time a machine beeped irregularly, I knew I couldn't wait. I had to reach out again. That night, while my husband slept in the hospital chair with his arms folded, I slipped my phone from my bag. Daniel's abandoned social media profile stared back at me, faded, half alive, like its owner. I typed furiously, my heart pounding. Daniel, please. I know I don't deserve even a word from you, but listen, Valentina doesn't have much time. The doctors say you might be her only hope. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know she confessed everything. She admitted she lied. She admitted she ruined you, and now she's begging to see you again before it's too late. I hesitated, thumb hovering. Then I pressed send. No reply. Not that day, not the next. On the third night, as I sat staring blankly at Valentina's monitors, my phone buzzed. My breath caught. Where? Just one word. I nearly dropped the phone in my rush to respond. Hospital, room 314. She's waiting for you. When he finally came, it was without announcement. No message, no warning, just the sound of footsteps in the hall. And then there he was, Daniel. He looked thinner than before, shadows carved under his eyes, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if he carried invisible weights. His clothes were plain, the same kind of worn backpack slung across his chest, but his presence filled the room, even in silence. Valentina's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, disbelief crossed her fragile face. Then recognition bloomed, and she broke into sobs. Daniel, her voice cracked. She tried to sit up, but the tubes held her down. I'm sorry, I ruined you. I lied and I destroyed you. Please, please forgive me. Tears streamed down her cheeks, dripping onto the pillow. Daniel stood at the edge of her bed, still, unreadable, his lips pressed tightly together. He didn't rush to embrace her. He didn't lash out either. He simply looked. Long enough that I could see Valentina's guilt reflected in his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, as though dragged over broken glass. I can't forgive you completely. His chest rose and fell sharply, then softer. But a part of me already has. Valentina let out a sob that shook her small body. Daniel reached out, hesitated, then touched her trembling hand. He didn't hold it long, just a fleeting grasp, but it was enough to send her into hysterical tears. I sat frozen in the chair, my heart splitting open. I wanted to thank him, to fall at his knees, to say I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But I couldn't move. After only a few minutes, he pulled back, his expression hardened again, the walls sliding back into place. If there's a funeral, I'll be there. His words were flat, final. He turned without looking at me, without acknowledging my presence at all, and walked out of the room. The door shut behind him with a quiet click, but the echo felt deafening. Valentina cried until she fell asleep from exhaustion. I stayed beside her, silent tears rolling down my face, each one burning like acid. The next morning, the doctor called us aside. His tone was clinical, but his eyes held sympathy. We ran further tests. The damage to her kidney is severe. A transplant is no longer optional. It's necessary. Time is critical. If we don't find a match soon... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I asked the question with a voice that barely carried. What are her chances? He hesitated, then said, with a sibling donor, particularly a biological brother, her survival rate rises significantly. Without it, the risks are extremely high. My knees nearly buckled. We ran tests, my husband and I. Neither of us were compatible. The chances of rejection were dangerously high. The truth was unavoidable. Daniel wasn't just her best option. He was her only option. That night, I told my husband we had to try again, that Daniel needed to hear it from both of us. His jaw clenched. You think he'll agree after everything? He already walked away. I don't care, we have to try. For once, he didn't argue. His shoulders slumped, a broken man with nothing left to fight for except the faint chance that his daughter might live. So we reached out again. Not from my number this time. Daniel would ignore that. We used another phone, wrote a simple message. It's important. Please meet us. One last time. To my surprise, he agreed. We met in a small cafe tucked in the corner of the city, far from familiar eyes. Rain tapped against the windows, gray light filling the room. Daniel arrived on time, his backpack still slung across his shoulder, his expression weary but steady. He sat down across from us without greeting, without warmth. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hiss of the espresso machine behind the counter. Finally, he broke the silence. What do you want? I swallowed hard, my throat raw. Daniel, We did the tests. The doctor says you're most likely a match. You could save Valentina." His eyes didn't flicker, not with anger, not with shock, just a flat, impenetrable wall. "You're asking me to donate to my sister?" His tone was ice. "Yes," I whispered. My husband leaned forward. "We know this doesn't erase the past, but it could be the first step. For her, for all of us, to maybe become a family again." Daniel's laugh was hollow, humorless. He looked down, then back up with a gaze that cut straight through us. "A family again?" I nodded, tears threatening. "We're not asking for forgiveness. Just help her. She's dying." He exhaled slowly. Then, for the first time, his expression shifted. He smiled. But it wasn't a smile of hope. It was sad, incredulous, almost cruel in its irony. "And you think this fixes everything?" My husband's fist clenched on the table. "It's not for us. It's for her." Daniel leaned back, his eyes burning. "Her? The same sister who said I touched her? The one who watched me sleep on the street and never said a word? The one who only apologized when she thought she was dying?" I tried to reach across the table. "Daniel, please." He cut me off, his voice rising. "Do you know how many times I thought about dying? How many nights I slept clutching my backpack? How many days I went without food? I almost jumped off a bridge. 3 times. And you know what stopped me? One thought. If I survive, I'll live my life without owing anyone anything." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping. His voice dropped again, cold, deliberate. My husband shot to his feet too, fists tight, his face red. "Your sister is dying. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Daniel looked at him with a mix of rage and pity. "You know what it means to me? That suddenly I matter. That now I'm useful. That now you want to hear me. But where were you when I begged?" I trembled, words spilling. "Just think about it, please. If not for her, then for yourself, for closure." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "I already have closure." He slung his backpack over his shoulder and walked away. No shouting, no insults, no tears. Just finality. And once again we were left with silence. But this time, silence wasn't empty. It was a death sentence ticking louder every second. After Daniel walked out of that cafe, something in me shattered all over again. Not because his refusal surprised me, it didn't, but because the way he carried himself made it clear he was no longer the boy I had once tucked into bed. He was someone forged from our betrayal, someone who had stitched his wounds with anger and silence. I sat frozen in that cafe chair long after he left, my hands trembling against the coffee cup I had barely touched. My husband paced like a caged animal, his jaw clenched, muttering curses under his breath. Ungrateful, heartless, selfish. But I didn't hear his words. I kept replaying Daniel's. I already have closure. It wasn't just rejection, it was a verdict. That night in the hospital, I sat by Valentina's bed and stared at her fragile body. Her skin was almost translucent, her small hand curled weakly in mine. The machines breathed for her, ticked for her, while she lay motionless. And in that sterile silence, my thoughts twisted. What mother wouldn't crawl across broken glass to save her child? But what mother destroys one child for another, then comes begging for pieces of him to save the one who lied? I hated myself for even daring to hope he might say yes. And yet hope wouldn't die. It gnawed at me, ugly and desperate. The next day, the doctor confirmed what I already feared. Her kidney is failing quickly. Without a transplant, she may not have long. He didn't have to spell it out. Every second counted. I went home that night, but I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, my phone glowing in the dark. Daniel's refusal burned in my chest like acid. I knew I had no right, no claim, but the thought circled endlessly. If he doesn't help, she will die. If he doesn't help, I will lose both of them. I thought about my son walking the streets alone, cold and hungry. I thought about his confession that he had nearly thrown himself off a bridge. I thought about Valentina's trembling voice, "I lied, Mom. I killed my brother." And then I thought about the last thing Daniel said in that hospital room. "If there's a funeral, I'll be there." The words twisted like a knife. He had already chosen which gathering he would attend. Not her recovery, not her rebirth, but her death. I looked at my husband across the table. He was silent, staring at the wall as though if he glared hard enough, it might break. Finally, he spoke through clenched teeth. "He's not a son anymore. He's a stranger. If he walks away from this, let him rot. Let him live with that guilt." I wanted to scream at him, to shake him until the truth fell out, that the guilt wasn't Daniel's to carry, it was ours. but the words stuck like thorns in my throat. The following days blurred into a haze of hospital visits, whispered prayers I didn't even believe in, and the sound of Valentina's weakening breath. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown. And then I broke. One evening, sitting alone in the hospital corridor, I scrolled through my phone. My thumb hovered over Daniel's profile again. The thought slid into my mind like poison. If I couldn't convince him in person, maybe others could. Maybe if the world saw, if strangers knew, they would pressure him, shame him, force him to act. I told myself it was for Valentina, that I had no choice. So I did it. I took a photo of Valentina, fragile and pale, tubes tangled around her small frame. I posted it online. My hands shook as I typed the words, each sentence dripping with desperation but also with manipulation. My daughter is dying. Her only chance is a transplant. Her brother is a match. She has begged for forgiveness, but he refuses to help. Please pray for her. And ask yourself, what kind of person refuses to save his little sister when he has the power to? I tagged him. I wrote his full name, and then I pressed post. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the comments began. Dozens at first, then hundreds. What kind of monster wouldn't donate one kidney to save his sister? Selfish bastard. A child's life matters more than pride. He's guilty. That's why he won't do it. Trash. Human trash. I refreshed the page every few minutes, my chest tight, my pulse racing. I told myself this would work, that the pressure would force him to come back, that he couldn't ignore the world. But 4 hours later, the notification came. Not a comment, not a private message, a video. Daniel had responded. I clicked it with shaking hands. There he was, sitting on a bench in an empty park, his hair unkempt, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked older, harder, and yet there was still a trace of the boy I remembered, buried under layers of pain. Hello, my name is Daniel, he began, his voice steady. Many of you know me because of what my mother posted today. Some of you knew me before, others only from what you've read. I want to tell you something I never had the chance to say. He paused, inhaled deeply, as though steadying himself. 2 years ago, my sister accused me of something I never did. She said it in front of my entire family. There was no proof, no witnesses, only her words. And without a single question, without giving me a chance to speak, they beat me. They threw me out. They took everything from me. I was 18, and in that moment, my world collapsed. My stomach twisted as his words filled the screen. He held up his phone, showing a recording. My breath stopped. It was Valentina's voice in the hospital, crying, confessing, begging for his forgiveness. I lied, I ruined you, I'm sorry. Hearing it again gutted me. Daniel looked back at the camera. His voice broke slightly. I saved this not for revenge, but because I knew one day someone would try to make me the villain again. That day came today. His eyes blazed. I do not wish for my sister to die, but I will not give my body as payment for the family that killed me while I was still alive. I am not your redemption. I am not a monster. I just learned how to say no, and this time I'm breaking the silence. The video ended. I sat in the hospital hallway, my phone in my hands, my body trembling. The comments exploded again, but now they weren't for him. They were for me. What kind of mother does this? You're the real monster. You destroyed your son and then tried to manipulate him. My husband cursed when he saw it. Ungrateful bastard. He'll regret this. But I knew. No, I felt it. Daniel wasn't the villain. He was the proof of ours. And yet, as I looked at my daughter through the glass of the ICU, pale and fading, the thought still circled, relentless. She is dying, and he can save her. The morning after Daniel's video, I couldn't bring myself to open my phone. It buzzed endlessly on the nightstand in the hospital, vibrating like a live thing, carrying thousands of voices I wasn't ready to hear. When I finally looked, the flood hit me. Notifications stacked in endless rows. Comments, direct messages, shares. My post had spiraled far beyond friends and relatives. Now strangers, entire communities, were weighing in on my family's destruction. Some called Daniel heartless. Others called him brave, but most turned their knives toward me. What kind of mother raises a daughter who lies and then manipulates a son she threw away? She's the monster, not him. You tried to crucify your son twice, first with lies, then with guilt. The words burrowed into me like hooks. I shut the screen off, but the echo of those comments clung to my chest like chains. Across the room, Valentina stirred weakly, her face pale, lips cracked. When she noticed the phone in my hand, she whispered, "Did he answer?" I hesitated. For a moment I considered lying, but what was the point? The truth had already escaped into the world. "Yes," I whispered, brushing her damp hair back. He answered. She studied my face, her eyes shimmering. "He hates me, doesn't he?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out, because I no longer knew the answer. That night, I forced myself to watch the video again. Daniel's eyes, haunted yet sharp, pierced through the screen. His voice, measured but heavy with pain, declared a truth I could no longer outrun. "I will not be your redemption. I am not a monster. I just learned to say no." But Daniel wasn't finished. The next day, another video appeared. This time, the backdrop wasn't a park bench, but a small table. Papers lay in front of him, neat and deliberate. His hair was disheveled, but his gaze carried an eerie calm, like a man who had rehearsed death and decided to live anyway. "I've been asked the same question again and again," he began, voice low, steady. "Why can't you just forgive?" I'm going to answer that, without anesthesia. He held up one of the papers, a medical record. "This is from a year ago. Diagnosis, severe depression, suicidal ideation, malnutrition. Do you know how I got here? Because I was accused of the worst thing you can accuse a person of. There was no trial, no evidence, just words, and those words destroyed me." He looked directly into the camera. "Do you know what it's like to be 18, homeless, hungry, sleeping in public bathrooms? To be spat on by strangers because they heard a rumor you can never erase? To beg God for death because life has become unbearable?" He set the paper down, his hand shaking slightly. Then he picked up a photo. My breath caught when I recognized it. It was Daniel and Valentina years ago, smiling in the backyard. He must have been 12, she 4. He had his arm around her, proud, protective. She had her arms wrapped around his neck, grinning. "I loved her," he said softly, staring at the picture. His voice trembled. "She was my little sister. I made her breakfast, walked her to school, told her bedtime stories. And when she lied, when she said those words, she didn't just destroy my life. She destroyed me." Then, slowly, he tore the photo in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed like a gunshot. His face hardened again. "My kidney is not a currency of redemption. I will not carve myself open so that my family can sleep easier at night. I will not donate, and I will not apologize for it." The silence stretched. Then he delivered the line that hollowed me out completely. "If you look for me at the funeral, I'll be in the back. Not to comfort, not to cry, but to watch what you built and what you let die." The video ended. I gagged, stumbled into the hospital bathroom, and vomited into the sink. My reflection stared back at me in the mirror, sunken eyes, ashen skin, a face that looked like it belonged to someone already buried. When I emerged, Valentina was awake. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with tears. "I saw it," she whispered hoarsely. "I saw the video." I froze. "Everyone hates me," she sobbed. "Everyone, even him." Her body shook with grief her small frame couldn't hold. I crawled into the hospital bed beside her and cradled her, but for the first time I didn't know if I was holding her out of love or out of guilt. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, it leapt from Facebook to TikTok compilations, to Reddit threads dissecting our downfall, to Twitter debates where strangers judged us like a public jury. People who had never met us spoke as though they had lived in our house. Some said Daniel was justified, that forgiveness does not equal sacrifice. Others said one kidney couldn't repay the life we ruined. But the cruelest words were reserved for us, for me. "You don't deserve to be called a mother. Your daughter died the moment she lied, and your son died when you threw him out. You killed them both. Stop asking Daniel to save the family that murdered him." The comments seeped into every crack of my being. I tried deleting the original post, but it was too late. Screenshots lived forever. The mob had taken ownership of our shame. My sister blocked me. My parents called, not with comfort, but with tears and accusations. Even distant relatives messaged, some offering venom, some saying they never wanted to hear from me again. I thought I had hit rock bottom. But then, one night, I found Valentina curled into herself, clutching her blanket. She looked up at me with swollen eyes and whispered, "Mom, am I a monster?" The question crushed what little remained of me. I wanted to tell her no, that she was just a child, that children make mistakes. But the truth was heavier. Her lie had become our executioner. I held her close and lied anyway. No, my love, you're not a monster. You're my daughter. Yet even as I said it, I wondered if Daniel's words were truer than mine. That monsters weren't born, they were made. And we had made him into one, at least in the world's eyes, before he ever had a chance to live. The days stretched into nights of endless alarms, doctor's updates, and the gnawing certainty that time was running out. Each breath Valentina took sounded like a borrowed one. And through it all, Daniel's videos replayed in my head on a loop. His voice steady, his words final. I will not be your redemption. My kidney is not your salvation. If you want me, you'll find me at the funeral. The funeral. The word dug into me like glass. Because deep down, I already knew he was right. After Daniel's second video, he disappeared. His profiles vanished. His number changed again, leaving no trace behind. The silence he left behind wasn't empty. It was absolute, final, like the last page of a book slammed shut. Valentina's condition deteriorated quickly. Machines became her lifeline, her small frame hidden beneath tubes and wires. Every time an alarm went off, my heart stopped. Each time a doctor walked in, my stomach clenched, bracing for words I couldn't bear. One night, the doctor pulled us aside, his voice flat, but his eyes heavy with sorrow. She isn't responding anymore. You need to prepare yourselves. It's only a matter of time. I slid down the wall, hugging my knees, numb. My husband stood frozen, pale as stone, a man hollowed out by his own rage and silence. He wasn't the man who had stormed through the house months ago, fists flying. He was a statue, cracked and crumbling. I returned to Valentina's bedside, her little hand barely warm in mine. I whispered, I'm here, my love. Mommy's here. But her eyes didn't open. Her lips didn't move. Only the steady beep of the monitor reminded me she was still here, clinging to life. And for the first time, I prayed. Not to a God I believed in, not for miracles I knew wouldn't come. I prayed for time, just a little more time. The next afternoon, a letter arrived at the hospital, slipped under the door in a plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper and a photograph. The note was from Daniel. Don't look for me. I'm not going to change my mind. I don't wish for her death, but I will not be dragged into your theater of redemption. Valentina lied. You believed her. I was sentenced without a trial. The only thing I ever asked was to be heard. You didn't. So don't ask me now to give you my body when you already took my soul. They say death redeems, but I died 2 years ago. Her end is not my fault. Her end is the echo of her beginning. I hope you find peace, but don't look for it in me. Tucked inside was a photo of him, young, smiling, back when we still believed we were a family. It was a knife straight through my chest. A week later, Valentina slipped away. There were no alarms, no sudden chaos. Just a flat tone, a steady line across the monitor. Her small hand grew cold in mine. My husband collapsed onto the floor, sobbing like I had never seen before. I didn't scream. I didn't wail. I just held her until the nurses gently pried her from my arms. The funeral was small. Most of the family had vanished from our lives, some out of shame, others out of anger. The air was thick with judgment and pity, with whispers that burned my skin even if I couldn't hear the words. And then Daniel came. He slipped in silently, sitting in the very last row, dressed simply, his face expressionless. He didn't approach the casket. He didn't look at us. He didn't cry. At the end, he stood, walked forward slowly, and placed a single white flower near Valentina's coffin. Then he turned and left without a word. I watched him go, my chest aching with a longing I couldn't name. I wanted to run to him, to throw myself at his feet, to beg, but my legs were made of stone, and my throat was sealed shut. When I returned home, the silence was unbearable. The house, once alive with children's voices, now echoed with emptiness. My husband no longer spoke. He sat in front of the television day after day, volume off, staring at static or muted images like a ghost haunting his own body. I wandered through the rooms alone, Valentina's clothes still folded neatly on her bed, her toys untouched, as if she might burst in at any moment to play again. I scrolled through photos on my phone, birthdays, laughter, smiles. Each one was a knife twisted deeper. And Daniel's words haunted me, his broken gaze, his steady voice, his refusal. I am not your redemption. My kidney is not your currency. I am not a monster. I just learned to say no. Sometimes at night, I imagine what it would have been like if I had asked him that first night. If I had looked into his eyes instead of wrapping my arms tighter around Valentina. If I had just whispered, "Tell me the truth." Would any of this have happened? Would my daughter still be alive? Would my son still love me? But there are no rewinds in life, only echoes. The online world moved on eventually. The comments slowed, the shares dwindled, the debates shifted to other tragedies. But for us, the verdict never left. In the quiet of our home, I hear the voices still. You killed him first. You destroyed both your children. You are the monster. And maybe they're right, because Valentina didn't die from lack of a kidney. She died from a lie, from our silence, from our refusal to listen. And Daniel didn't die at all. We killed him in life long before his sister's body gave out. Now I walk these rooms, empty but for ghosts, repeating one truth over and over: death doesn't come alone. It drags guilt and memory behind it, and those things cannot be buried. Not with prayers, not with apologies, not with time. They live forever,